Today we're going to install this compact heater from Cadet. The next thing we'll do is we'll put a lockout tag out so nobody accidentally turns the power on. What I've already done is I've measured up 17 inches from the floor to the bottom of the heater. The heater's going to go in vertically. What I need to do is keep my sheetrock saw tight against the 2x4 to ensure a snug fit for the other 3 cuts. After sawing up the wall, I've reached my 10-inch mark. Now I remeasure the box again, and it measures 7 3/4 inches. So I put this mark on the wall. Now what I do is I use my level to draw my line across to the mark that I just put on the wall, and I turn around and I make a vertical line down the wall as well to the bottom. This way here my lines are all laid out and I can just cut at will, and knowing that my first initial cut up the wall was snug and tight, so now my box will be fitting tight. Use caution whenever you're cutting with the sheetrock saw inside the wall. If you feel something rubbing back and forth on your saw, generally it's either a wire of some sort, so use extreme caution whenever you feel that and try to work your way around it. As you can see, this is a firewall with 2 sheets of 5/8 on it. Plus there's 2 cables running down the wall. Now what I'm going to do is just be on the safe side, even though it is locked out and tagged out. I'm just going to double check to make sure that I don't have any hot wires. Nothing worse than making your day be a 240 volt jolt. Now what I'm doing is stuffing the wires back up the wall. I've already pulled them, trimmed them to the length that I'm going to need, and now I'm going to trial fit the box one more time. Might take a couple times, but slow and steady, you'll make sure that this thing is fitting snug. Take your sheetrock saw and scrape the side like a rasp, and you'll get a smooth edge on it. And then try your box fit again. You want them to fit in there really snug. What you see here is I've put in 2 metallic screw clamps. These screw clamps are used anytime you're pulling any kind of wires through a metallic box, such as here. This also is used to hold the cables into place when you're pushing the box into the wall securely so it won't be moved around. I like to stick this extra piece of 2x4 in the wall cavity. It helps hold that Cadet box really secure. Put a screw in the center of your 2x4 to hold it into place. That way when you're putting your can screws into it, it won't twist or slide around on you. Now that you have your box pushed into place and your wires are all pulled down, get your sheetrock screws and screw them into the 2x4s. Only turn them in tight enough to pull the box snug. Don't warp or twist the box. It's unnecessary tension on the box. The next thing is removing the sheathing. Use a sharp blade. Use your index finger as a guide and run it on the outside of the 240 cable. Use light pressure. You do not want to cut through and cut out either of the insulations off either the black or the white wire. After removing all the shielding, what I need to do is join the ground wires together as one, and then I'll attach them to the ground screw inside the box. I press all the wires down to make sure that they're fitting where I need them to. I want to hold them securely into place. I joined the grounds by just taking and twisting them around each other. Having one sticking out longer than the other enables me to just attach it to the ground screw, and it makes a positive ground, ensuring a complete circuit. The last thing I have to do here is to trim the length of the ground wire and then bend a shepherd's hook into it. Once I have the shepherd's hook bent into it, then the last thing to do is just to anchor it with the screw, which is green inside the box, and that will complete the ground that Cadet's requiring to operate a 240 volt heater. Here I'm beginning to bring the two black wires together with the pigtail. You need to twist these wires with a pair of lineman's pliers to join them as one. Just putting it under a wire nut isn't sufficient enough to make sure that you have continuity on the wire. All wires have 360 degrees around them, and it's important to twist them together like this so you wrap all of it together. Once you do that, trim them down to the appropriate length and go on to the next one. When you finish doing this, then you can put your wire caps on it, and then that'll complete that process. What I've noticed when I put this wire cap on is that the insulation wasn't all the way up inside the cap, so I trimmed it off, and now I'm screwing the cap back down. It's a good idea to use your lineman's pliers to your advantage when you're using heavy gauged wire such as these 10s. Give them a couple extra twists with your lineman's pliers to ensure that you have a good grip on the 3 wires that you joined into that pigtail. Once you have both sets of pigtails created, tuck them down to the very bottom of the box. This is the coolest area of the heater box, and it allows the insulation to not get brittle over time. Make sure that you tuck them in there securely. They're just sitting there poked out right now so I can attach my strand wire to them. Every time you attach a strand wire to a solid core wire, you want to trim back a little bit more than what the factory has cut. Because when you twist the wire together, the strands, they become a little bit shorter. You can see I only trimmed maybe a 1/4 inch longer. This gives you more material to screw inside of that cap, making sure that everything's secure. Give it a good tug on the strand wires after you put the cap on. The last thing to do is just set the heater into the 2 little notches in the bottom and put the screw in the top and turn it down snug. Don't over tighten it. Somebody else is going to have to take it apart. And if you strip it, they're screwed. We don't want sheetrock screws holding our heaters on. What I've done to get to this point is I used the cutout for the Cadet heater box, and I've taken and I've put about 1.5 inch border on the inside all the way around on that plug that I cut out of the wall. And then what I did is I scribed it onto the wall, and now what I'm doing is removing the excess sheetrock to make the patch fit that hole. You can see the patch in my hand with the paper hanging over the sides. That's the border that I'm going to trace out on the wall right now, and then I'll have to remove that excess paper off of the wall, making this patch just about completely go invisible once you get it all in place. It's a really good patch to use on walls, never in a ceiling. You don't have to worry about thickness of the sheetrock as long as there's not a stud behind it. What I'm doing now is removing the paper off the gypsum that I scribed onto the wall. The reason why I removed this paper is because there's already paper on the patch that has that border that I'm cutting out. This way you only have 1 layer of paper going on the wall, and it makes the patch become near invisible to the eye. So now we're getting ready to put the mud on the edge. I call this buttering the bread. Just pull it up on the edge of the sheetrock, and what that excess amount of sheetrock mud's going to do is it's going to squeeze out underneath that paper onto the wall. The rest of it's going to help fill the void and make the patch become strong as one piece of sheetrock joining itself to the other one. So when you put this in the hole, just put it in, press it into place, squeeze out the excess as you can see how I'm doing here, I have to pull it up on the bottom because it's falling down. I don't want it touching the floor. A little extra just for good measure right here. You can see how this patch is just fitting the hole as I'm going along. And then you use trowel and just trowel out the excess. Sorry, my knee's in the way. But you get the idea here. Use long diagonal strokes, not putting a bunch of pressure in the center, but more over where the paper has been removed and you're squeezing out the excess. Do a skim coat over the top, let it set up, and then you can sponge it out and you won't even know that it's on the wall. Little texture, primer, and paint is ready to go.